The research ship Starwind floated silently in deep space. Its engines hummed softly, and bright blue lights glowed along its silver hull. Inside, the alien crew worked carefully, recording new data about a frozen moon they had been studying for weeks. The crew was from the species called Vulmar, tall beings with pale green skin and wide black eyes. They were calm and logical, and they disliked anything that caused discomfort. But today they faced a mystery that had nothing to do with science. The mystery had 2 arms, 2 legs, messy brown hair, and a constant smile. Her name was Mara, the only human on board the Starwind. Captain Vur, the leader of the Vulmar crew, stood near the observation deck. He was reading a report on his wrist tablet when he noticed something strange on the temperature log. The storage room's internal sensors showed a sudden drop. It was now below freezing. Yet according to the motion sensors, someone was inside. He blinked his wide eyes and called out, "Who is inside cold storage without protection?" The communication officer, Relu, who had 4 small arms, checked the internal camera feed. When the image appeared, the entire bridge went silent. There was Mara, standing casually inside the freezing storage room. She was wearing only her light ship uniform, no thermal coat, no gloves, and no helmet. In her hand, she held a metal cup, drinking something that looked like a pink smoothie. She even seemed to be humming a cheerful tune. Captain Vur tilted his head. "She will freeze solid. Call the medical unit." Relu opened the channel and said quickly, "Human Mara, please leave the cold storage immediately. You are in a dangerous environment." Mara looked up at the camera and smiled. "Dangerous? Oh no, it's fine. It's just a little chilly in here." The entire crew stared at the screen in confusion. To them, the room temperature was deadly. Even a short exposure would cause their blood to crystallize. But Mara continued to walk around as if she were in a normal room. Medic Pora, who had blue scales across her forehead, gasped. "Her species is insane. No one can survive that cold." Mara took another sip of her drink and laughed. "Where I'm from, this is nothing. You should see winter back home." Captain Vur rubbed the edge of his crest, which was something he did when deeply stressed. "You call this nothing? It is -10 degrees. Our emergency heaters activate at this point." Mara shrugged. "Feels refreshing. I just needed a quiet place to think," Relu whispered to Pora. "How can she think while freezing?" Pora shook her head slowly. "Perhaps her brain is unaffected by low temperature. That would explain a lot." After a few minutes, Captain Vur decided to go see her himself. He wrapped himself in 3 thermal layers, put on a full breathing mask, and activated heat pads around his chest. As he stepped into the cold storage, he almost shivered despite the protection. The air felt sharp, like tiny knives on his skin. Yet there was Mara, sitting on a metal crate, legs crossed, happily drinking and tapping her fingers against her knee. "Human Mara," he said, his voice coming out through his mask. "You cannot stay here. It is unsafe." Mara smiled at him as if he were overreacting. "Oh, Captain, it's really not that bad. On my planet, people actually go camping in this kind of weather. Some even swim in frozen lakes for fun." The captain blinked twice. "For fun?" "Yes," she said cheerfully. "It wakes up the body, makes you feel alive." He stared at her, trying to decide if she was joking. "Do humans often risk death to feel alive?" Mara laughed softly. "Well, maybe a little." "We like challenges." Captain Vur stepped closer, careful not to slip on the icy floor. "I will note this in the research log. Humans enjoy cold conditions that would destroy most life forms." Mara grinned. "That sounds about right," he sighed. "You confuse me, human Mara. You sweat in normal temperatures, yet you say this is comfortable." Mara stood and stretched her arms. "That's because humans can adapt fast. We can live in deserts, mountains, jungles, and frozen places. My ancestors had to survive everything nature threw at them." The captain looked impressed, though his face barely showed emotion. "That is admirable, but still. Please leave before you become a solid ice figure." She finally agreed and walked out of the storage room, not even shivering. When they reached the hallway, Relu and Pora were waiting with thermal blankets and heaters. Mara waved them off. "I'm fine, really. Just a little cool." Relu's eyes were wide. "You are not fine. Your skin should be frozen," Mara smiled. "Nope. My body's just doing its thing." Pora sighed and began scanning her with a small medical device. "Temperature normal. Heart rate normal. I do not understand. You have no internal heat generator, no shield, and yet you remain stable." Mara laughed. "It's called stubbornness." Captain Vur tilted his head again. Stubbornness. That must be a human organ. The crew made more notes in the daily report. They wrote things like, humans display resistance to extreme cold. They describe lethal conditions as refreshing. Possible connection between survival ability and mental instability. That night, the story of the human in the freezer spread across the ship. Other crew members came by Mara's quarters asking questions. One alien asked, "Do you also enjoy fire?" Another asked, "Can you survive in space for a short time?" Mara laughed so much she almost spilled her drink. No, I can't survive in space. But we do go to space just for fun sometimes." The alien stared at her again. "You travel into danger willingly?" "Of course," Mara said. "It's exciting. The unknown keeps us going." The next morning, Captain Vur held a crew meeting to discuss the human phenomenon. On the screen behind him were several graphs showing temperature ranges and survival levels. He pointed at one section. "Based on our data, humans can tolerate a wide range of temperatures. However, they do not appear to have thick skin or extra fat layers like other cold-resistant species. Can anyone explain how this is possible?" Relu raised one of his hands. "Perhaps their bodies release some chemical that prevents freezing," Pora added. "Or perhaps their skin generates energy through friction when they move." Mara, who was sitting at the back with a cup of coffee, raised her hand. "Actually, we just get used to it. If you live somewhere cold, your body adjusts. You wear layers, drink warm things, and keep moving. It's not magic." The crew turned to her, half amazed and half doubtful. Captain Vur said, "So the secret is practice?" "Pretty much," Mara said. "And a strong will. Humans can push through almost anything if they have to." The captain tapped on his tablet again. "Interesting. Your kind may be physically weak compared to other species, but mentally you seem unbreakable." Mara smiled. "That's one of our best qualities." Later that day, the crew decided to run a test to understand her better. They set up 2 temperature chambers, one hot, one cold. The alien stood outside, watching through glass walls. Mara stepped into the cold chamber first. Frost began to form on the walls, but she only rubbed her hands and smiled. "Feels like winter," she said. Then she moved into the hot chamber. The air shimmered with heat waves, and even the aliens outside felt uncomfortable. Yet Mara only wiped her forehead and laughed. "Feels like summer." Captain Vur recorded everything carefully. He said quietly, "It is official. Humans are temperature-resistant anomalies." After the test, they all gathered in the dining area. The aliens sipped on warm nutrient broth while Mara enjoyed ice cream. Pora could not stop watching her. "You just came out of the freezing chamber. Should you not want something hot?" Mara smiled. "This helps me cool down," Captain Vur sighed. "Your logic is upside down." Mara laughed again. "It's called balance." The crew looked at each other, unsure if they were learning about science or madness. That night, as the ship drifted past a glowing nebula, Captain Vur stood near the viewport. He stared at the stars, then at Mara, who was humming softly beside him. "Human Mara," he said, "I believe I understand why your kind explores so far. You are not afraid of discomfort. You accept it. That makes you dangerous in the best way." Mara smiled and looked out at the stars. "We just like to see what's out there, Captain. Cold or hot, hard or easy, it doesn't matter. It's all part of the adventure." The captain gave a slow nod. "Perhaps that is what makes humans special." In his final report for the day, Captain Vur wrote a note. Observation 046. Human crew member displays tolerance for extreme conditions. Subject claims this is due to stubbornness. Recommend further study before declaring her immortal. He read the note once more, then looked up at Mara, who was now sipping another drink, this time with ice. Life aboard the Starwind had slowly settled into a routine again after the freezer event. The alien crew had added a new rule to the safety list on the control board. It read, Rule 42. Do not enter freezing areas unless you are a human. Mara found that rule hilarious every time she walked past it. To the Volmar crew, she was now famous for being the warm blood. One calm morning, Captain Vur decided to hold a briefing. The ship was heading to a small moon to collect soil samples, and the crew was busy preparing equipment. But during the briefing, everyone got distracted by a strange smell in the room. The smell was sharp, burning, and oddly inviting. It filled the air so quickly that several of the Volmar started coughing. Relu, the communication officer, blinked fast and said, "What is that odor? It feels like acid on my tongue." Medic Pora covered her nose with a cloth. It burns my eyes. Who released chemicals inside the room? Captain Ver raised his head, looked around, and then saw Mara sitting in the corner smiling, holding a bright orange bag. He frowned. Human Mara, what are you consuming? Mara looked up, cheerful as always. Oh, this? Just a snack. Want some? Pora stared in horror. Your snack is producing smoke, Mara laughed. That's the spice. It's supposed to be like that. The crew leaned closer, curious but scared. The smell got stronger. It was like fire trapped inside a bag. Captain Ver took a cautious step forward. Explain, please. Why would food be painful to the senses? Mara opened the bag wider and held out a thin red chip. They're called spicy chips. The best snack in the galaxy. Try one. Relu stepped back quickly. No, thank you. My tongue would melt. Mara shrugged and popped one into her mouth. Her eyes watered. Her nose turned red and she started breathing faster. The aliens thought she was dying. Pora jumped forward with a medical scanner. Her temperature is rising. Her face is turning pink. She is overheating. Captain, I must intervene. Mara waved her hand. I'm fine. It's just spicy. Captain Ver tilted his head. Spicy? You're in pain. Yes, Mara said between bites. That's the fun part. The crew looked at each other, completely lost. Relu whispered. She says pain is fun. Pora frowned. That cannot be correct. Pain is a signal of damage, Mara laughed. It's not real damage. It's a little burn on your tongue that makes your brain excited. It's like a flavor adventure. The captain took a deep breath. Your species truly enjoys suffering. Mara grinned. Only the tasty kind. The aliens took more notes. They had a long list by now, starting with humans can live in freezing cold, and now adding humans eat pain for pleasure. The ship's ventilation system tried to clear the spicy smoke, but it spread faster. Within minutes, every room had a hint of that burning scent. The engineering crew panicked, thinking something was on fire. Engineer Tovik, who was repairing a panel near the reactor core, called over the radio. Captain, there is smoke spreading in Section B. Should I activate emergency systems? Captain Vor replied, negative. It is human food vapor. There was a long pause, then Tovik answered, I did not know human food could create fire signals. Ver sighed. Neither did I. Later that day, when Mara walked into the cafeteria, she found half the crew standing near the food dispensers, holding small sample trays. They looked nervous but curious. Relu spoke first. We have decided to understand this human spice behavior. For science, Mara smiled. You're brave. Here, try one chip each. Small bite only. Pora sniffed hers carefully. It smells dangerous. That's how you know it's good, Mara said encouragingly. The aliens took a bite together. There was a moment of silence, then chaos. Relu's eyes went wide and he started fanning his face with all four arms. Pora made a high-pitched noise that sounded like a whistle. Captain Ver stood perfectly still, his eyes blinking fast. My mouth, he said slowly, is on fire. Mara laughed so hard she almost dropped the bag. It's not real fire. Drink some water. Relu grabbed a glass and swallowed it in one go. Pora's tail was twitching and she yelled, Why would anyone eat this willingly? Mara wiped her tears of laughter. Because it's delicious. Captain Ver finally sat down, breathing deeply. Human Mara, your sense of taste is a weapon. That's one way to put it, she said, still smiling. The event became known as the snack incident. For the next few days, the crew avoided eating near Mara. Even the food machines were labeled with warnings. Do not share meals with humans without permission. But curiosity never dies easily. A few days later, Engineer Tovik approached Mara in the maintenance bay. Human Mara, he said, I have been thinking about your spicy chips. Yeah? She asked while fixing a panel. I want to know if there is a scientific reason you enjoy pain from heat flavor. Mara smiled. Well, it's not really pain. It's called capsaicin. It tricks the brain into thinking something is hot. Some people hate it. Others love the thrill. Tovik looked thoughtful. So you train your body to enjoy something that feels dangerous? Exactly, Mara said proudly. It's about building tolerance. The more you eat, the stronger you get. The engineer looked amazed. Humans adapt through food. Through everything, Mara said. We like to test our limits. Tovik nodded and made a note in his tablet. Humans use flavor as a test of endurance. Later, during lunch, Captain Vore decided to bring up the topic again. The crew sat around the table, still nervous about any human food nearby. Vore looked at Mara and said, "You enjoy cold that could kill you and food that causes pain. Is this normal behavior for humans?" Mara thought for a moment. "Pretty much, yes. We like to feel things. Life would be boring if everything was easy or soft. Some of us even compete to eat the hottest food." Pora groaned. "Compete? You turn eating into a danger contest?" Mara nodded. "Exactly. Whoever lasts longest wins." The room fell silent. The Volmar crew could not decide if humans were brave or broken. Captain Vore said quietly, "Perhaps this is why humans explore the universe." "You are not afraid of discomfort," Mara smiled. "Maybe. We like to see how far we can go." The captain leaned back in his chair. "It is both admirable and terrifying." That evening, Mara sat alone in the observation deck watching stars drift by. The stars always calmed her, reminding her of home. She missed the simple things: campfires, rain, and late-night snacks with friends. The Volmar were kind and patient, but everything they did was cautious. They lived by logic, not by passion. When Captain Vore entered the deck quietly, she didn't turn around. He stood beside her and said, "You are thinking of home." "Yeah," she said softly. "Sometimes I miss Earth. It's noisy, dangerous, but full of life." He nodded slowly. "I begin to see that humans need challenge to feel alive. My people seek peace and stability." "You seek change." "That's true," Mara said. "But that's why we work well together. You keep things safe and we make them exciting." Vore gave a small smile, something rare for his species. "A balance of logic and chaos," she laughed. "Exactly." Before he left, he looked at her again. "One day I may understand your kind." "But not today," Mara grinned. "That's okay, Captain. Even humans don't fully understand humans." The next morning, another strange event occurred. Someone had placed a small note on the cafeteria wall. It read, "Warning. Human snacks may cause fire, confusion, and unexpected joy." No one admitted writing it, but everyone knew who inspired it. By the end of the week, Mara had become a ship legend again. The aliens would whisper stories about the human who ate fire and laughed. They even began a friendly betting pool on what Mara would do next that defied logic. Captain Vore pretended to be annoyed by the growing list of human oddities, but deep down, he was fascinated. The more he observed Mara, the more he realized that humans were not just strange, they were unstoppable. Even their smallest actions, like eating something too spicy, showed courage. They faced discomfort not because they had to, but because they wanted to. In his nightly report, he wrote carefully, "Observation 047. Human crew member consumes food that triggers pain responses. Claims enjoyment. Possible evidence that humans evolved to seek challenge in all things." He paused before writing the final line. Then, with a slow nod, he added, "Conclusion. Humans are not only weird, they are a living paradox." As he closed his report, he heard Mara laughing somewhere down the hallway. The sound echoed through the ship, bright and alive, filling the cold metal halls with something warm and human. Captain Vore allowed himself a quiet chuckle and said under his breath, "Humans are weird, but maybe that is what makes them wonderful." The Starwind drifted silently above a green jungle planet. From orbit, the surface looked peaceful, covered in endless trees that shone like emeralds under the twin suns. But the crew knew that peace was only on the outside. The planet below was wild, full of unpredictable storms and creatures that could crush a Volmar transport in seconds. Captain Vore stood on the bridge, looking at the map projection. "Our scanners show high mineral readings in Sector 9. We will land there for collection." Relu adjusted his controls. "Storm patterns are unstable, Captain. The atmosphere is thick and heavy. I recommend limited time on the surface," Vore nodded. "Agreed, we will take a small team. Human Mara will join for terrain work. Her resistance to strange conditions may be useful." Pora looked uneasy. "Captain, are you sure? That planet's air pressure is high. It could harm her lungs." Mara was standing nearby, sipping coffee, and smiled. "Don't worry. I've climbed mountains back on Earth. I'll be fine." Captain Vore sighed. "Every time you say that, something strange happens," she laughed. "That's what makes it fun." Within hours, the landing team was ready. The small shuttle descended through thick clouds. Lightning flashed outside, painting the cabin in white light. The Volmar crew tightened their safety straps, but Mara leaned closer to the window, eyes wide with excitement. Beautiful, she whispered. Pora turned to her. Beautiful? It looks deadly, Mara grinned. Deadly things can be beautiful too. When they landed, the jungle was alive with sounds. The trees were huge, their roots rising from the ground like walls. The air was warm and wet, filled with strange chirping noises. The crew activated scanners and began collecting samples. At first, everything went smoothly, but then the ground trembled. A low rumbling sound echoed through the forest. Birds took off in flocks, screaming as they disappeared into the canopy. Relu looked at his scanner. Captain, something large is moving toward us. Very large. Return to the shuttle, Four ordered quickly. Before they could move, the ground shook again. From between the trees, a massive creature appeared. It looked like a cross between a rhino and a lizard, with thick armor plates and glowing yellow eyes. Pora froze. That thing is a mountain with legs. Mara looked at it with wide eyes. Wow, look at that, Vor shouted. Do not stare, human, run! The creature roared, a sound that made the air itself vibrate. The team began running toward the shuttle, leaves and branches flying everywhere. But halfway through, a strong gust of wind hit them. The storm had arrived. Dark clouds rolled in quickly. Rain fell in heavy sheets and lightning cracked across the sky. The shuttle shook violently as it tried to power up. Relu shouted, "Engines are unstable. The storm energy is interfering." Captain Vor tried to stay calm, though his crest was trembling.
Hold position.
Activate stabilizers. The ground was slick with mud. The giant creature roared again, charging toward the sound of the shuttle. Pora screamed, "It's coming straight for us!" And then, in the middle of all that chaos, came the strangest sound of all, Mara's laughter. She was laughing loudly, almost joyfully. Her hair was wet, her face splashed with mud, and she was holding onto a support beam, grinning like a child at a carnival. Captain Vor turned in disbelief. "Human Mara, have you lost your senses? We are moments from death." Mara's voice rose above the storm. "This is amazing," Pora shouted. "Amazing?" "The world is ending." Mara laughed harder. "It's like a roller coaster back home. You know, fast, loud, terrifying, but fun." Captain Vor grabbed her arm. "This is not entertainment. It is survival." But Mara was already moving toward the control panel, helping Relu adjust the stabilizer. Her hands moved quickly, almost dancing across the buttons. She smiled the whole time, even when lightning struck nearby. Relu watched her and said, "She is not afraid." "How is she not afraid?" Mara said between laughs, "Because fear makes you slow. You have to laugh to stay calm." Captain Vor could not understand. Her face showed joy when others would be shaking in terror. Yet somehow her calmness helped. The crew began to focus again. Her laughter cut through their panic like sunlight through clouds. Finally, the engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted off the ground just as the giant creature slammed its tail where they had been standing. The impact shook the air, but they were already climbing higher. When they broke through the clouds, silence filled the cabin. Only the sound of breathing and soft hums from the control panels remained. Mara wiped rain from her face and smiled. "That was wild." Captain Vor turned to her slowly. "You laughed during a near-death experience." "Yeah," she said, still smiling. "It helps me think," Pora groaned. "Helps you think?" "It nearly stopped my heart." Mara leaned back in her seat. "You should try it. It keeps your mind sharp," Relu said quietly. "Humans are the only species I know who laugh at danger." Ver crossed his arms. "They also run into storms and call it fun." Mara grinned again. "You just need to see the bright side." Later that night, back on the main ship, the crew held a meeting to review the mission. Captain Vor replayed the footage of the storm. On the screen, they saw Mara laughing as the shuttle shook violently. Relu paused the video and said, "Captain, we should analyze this behavior. It may be a form of psychological control." Pora nodded. "Yes, laughter might be a defense response. It confuses both the enemy and the brain." Mara, sitting nearby, shrugged. "Maybe, but I just think it's funny." Ver sighed. "You find danger funny. You find cold relaxing. You find pain delicious. Do humans fear anything?" Mara thought for a moment. "Of course we do. But fear doesn't have to control us. Sometimes you can laugh at it and it becomes smaller." That answer made the room quiet. Even Pora, who usually scolded her, seemed thoughtful. Relu said softly, "Perhaps that is why humans survive so well." "You trick fear itself." Mara smiled. Exactly. If you stop being afraid, you can do anything. After the meeting, Captain Vore stayed behind to write his report. His hands moved slowly as he typed. Observation, Zo 48. Human reaction to fear includes laughter. This appears to calm others and improve focus. Possible evolutionary adaptation. He stopped writing for a moment and looked at the ceiling. The image of Mara standing in the storm, laughing while lightning struck around her, stayed in his mind. He whispered, "She's either very brave or very foolish." The next day, the crew was scheduled for minor repairs outside the ship. It required working in spacesuits near the hull, something that always made the Volmar nervous. The endless blackness of space gave them anxiety. Mara volunteered to assist. She floated beside Captain Vore, connected by safety lines, humming a tune as she worked. He said through the comm, "You are unusually cheerful during dangerous work." She chuckled. "Dangerous? We're just fixing panels. Besides, I like the view." Below them, the planet shone like a green marble. Stars stretched forever in every direction. Captain Vore looked down too. "You are not afraid of the void?" "No," she said. "It's beautiful. Fear only takes away the beauty of things." When they finished the repair, the captain thought about her words the entire way back. He realized that humans did not ignore fear. They simply refused to bow to it. Later that evening, Pora came to Mara's cabin carrying a small box. "I brought you something," she said. Mara opened it and found a small metal badge shaped like a storm cloud. "What's this?" she asked. Pora smiled shyly. "A reminder for surviving the jungle storm with laughter." Mara laughed softly. "Thanks, Pora. I didn't know you liked my sense of humor." Pora looked serious. "I do not understand it, but I respect it. You make fear look small." Mara nodded. "That's all any of us can do." Later, Captain Vore added a final note to his private log. Humans laugh in danger not because they are careless, but because they are alive. Their strange joy spreads to others and turns fear into strength. When a human laughs, even death feels less certain. He closed the log and leaned back in his chair. Outside the viewport, lightning flashed across the green planet below. He could almost hear Mara's laughter again, echoing in his memory. He smiled faintly and said to himself, "Humans are weird, but maybe their weirdness keeps the stars a little brighter." The desert planet was called Doran 5, and it was one of the harshest worlds the crew of the Starwind had ever visited. The surface was covered with endless sand dunes that moved with the strong winds, swallowing anything left unanchored. The sun there was white and cruel, burning through the clouds. The air shimmered with heat even when the crew stood inside their protective suits. For most of the alien crew, this planet was considered nearly unlivable, but for the human named Mara, it was simply another adventure. The crew had landed near a rocky ridge to collect mineral samples needed for reactor studies. Captain Vore had ordered everyone to stay close and work in pairs. The air outside was thin and filled with fine dust that got into every crack and tool. The alien crew members, who were used to colder and softer worlds, struggled to move in the heat. Their scales and protective membranes dried fast even with hydration packs. Mara, wearing her light environment suit, moved around easily, humming to herself as she helped others set up the drills. The aliens admired her strength but were still nervous about her casual attitude toward danger. Every time she laughed or worked under the blazing sun, they whispered to each other about how humans were strange creatures built for discomfort. While collecting samples near a canyon edge, Mara heard something like a faint cry carried by the wind. It was weak and stretched, almost like the sound of a broken whistle. She paused and turned her helmet toward the sound. None of the others seemed to notice it, as they were busy handling equipment. Mara tilted her head, listening again, and caught the sound once more, a mix of pain and fear. She walked toward the direction of the noise, her boots sinking into the loose sand. After a short walk, she found a small creature lying beside a cracked rock. It was covered in reddish fur, but one of its legs was twisted at an odd angle, and its breathing was heavy. Its eyes were wide with fear. When it saw Mara, it hissed softly and tried to drag itself away, but it was too weak to move. Mara knelt down carefully, speaking softly, even though the creature could not understand her words. She said it was all right and that she would not hurt it. Her voice carried calmness and her body language was slow and open. She slowly removed one glove and reached out. The creature flinched, baring tiny fangs, but she did not stop. She took out a blanket from her pack and wrapped it around the creature to keep it from thrashing. Back at the ridge, Captain Vur noticed her missing. His heart scales tightened with worry. He called through the comms. "Human Mara, report your position. You are leaving assigned range." Her voice came back calmly. "I found something hurt out here. I'm bringing it back." The crew stopped their work and stared at each other. Vur replied quickly, "What do you mean by something? The local life forms on this planet are not friendly." "Yeah," Mara said, still gentle but firm. "But it's injured and scared. It won't make it without help." The aliens started whispering through private channels, worried that she might get bitten or poisoned. Medic Pora prepared her scanner and antidotes just in case. When Mara finally returned, they saw her carrying a wrapped bundle in her arms. She placed it carefully inside a sample container and began checking its wound. The small creature was unlike anything they had seen before. It had 6 limbs, a sharp ridge along its back, and eyes that glowed faintly blue. It looked like a mix of a fox and a lizard, but its energy signature showed it was venomous. "Mara, that thing can kill you," said Pora, stepping back nervously. "It's fine," Mara said in her calm voice. "It's just in pain." Vur moved closer, trying to remain composed. "Human, it could attack once it feels stronger." "Why risk it?" She smiled a little. "Because it deserves a chance. If we can help, we should." The captain wanted to argue, but he saw something in her eyes that stopped him. He sighed and ordered Pora to help with basic treatment. Together, they cleaned the wound, wrapped the leg, and injected a healing gel. The creature twitched but did not bite. It kept its glowing eyes fixed on Mara the whole time. Hours later, the team completed their mission and prepared to leave. Mara made a small bed for the creature in a crate and gave it water from her own supply. The others watched in disbelief. When they took off into orbit, Mara stayed near the crate. The creature had stopped shaking and was breathing normally. It made a low purring sound that echoed softly inside the cabin. The aliens had never heard anything like it before. Vur walked over and looked down. "It seems attached to you now," he said. Mara chuckled. "Maybe it knows we helped it. Or maybe it's just curious." The captain looked thoughtful. "Your behavior confuses us, human Mara. You take great risks for creatures that cannot understand you." "You could have been hurt," she shrugged. "Maybe. But if we only help those who understand us, we'll never grow kinder." Her words stayed with the crew long after. 2 days later, something strange happened. As the Starwind prepared to leave orbit, a group of desert predators appeared near the landing site. They were large armored beasts with tusks and hard shells. When the crew went outside to secure equipment, one of the beasts charged at them. The aliens panicked and scrambled to get back to safety. Before they could react, a sudden screech filled the air. From above the ridge, the small creature on the one Mara had saved and appeared. Its fur was standing on end and its body glowed faint blue under the sunlight. It jumped between the crew and the predators, hissing and spreading its limbs. The beast stopped, sniffed the air, and slowly backed away. The crew stood frozen in shock. Mara walked forward and knelt beside the little creature. "You came back," she said softly. It chirped once, then rubbed its head against her hand before running off again into the dunes. Captain Vur watched silently. "It protected us," he said in disbelief. "Yeah," Mara replied. "Sometimes kindness comes back when you least expect it." When the ship finally left Doran 5, the crew couldn't stop talking about what they had seen. The aliens debated for hours. Some believed the creature acted out of instinct. Others believed it somehow understood gratitude. Vur, however, wrote his own conclusion in the captain's log. Entry 046. Humans continue to show behavior that defies logic. They risk their safety to aid others, even hostile creatures. Their kindness appears to create connections that our science cannot explain. Perhaps empathy is not weakness, but a force that binds life across worlds. That night, as the ship drifted quietly through space, Mara sat near the observation window. The stars shimmered like grains of light across the Black Sea. She held a small piece of fur she had found where the creature stood before leaving. She smiled, whispering softly, "Safe travels, little one." The aliens who saw her sitting there did not disturb her. They had learned something new that day, something no sensor or scan could measure. They realized that humans carried not only courage but also compassion that reached beyond reason. And in the silent corridors of the Starwind, where metal and light met the cold vacuum of space, the alien crew spoke of a new kind of strength, the strength that came from caring, even when there was nothing to gain. From that day on, whenever they encountered unknown life forms on other planets, The aliens remembered what they had witnessed on Doran 5. They moved slower, spoke softer, and looked for signs of understanding. They were still scientists and explorers, but now they carried a small part of human warmth with them. Captain Vur often thought about what Mara had said, that helping others was what made humans human. He began to see it not as strange but as something beautiful. When new recruits joined the Starwind, the older crew members would tell them stories about human Mara, the one who wrapped danger in a blanket and called it a friend. And every time someone laughed at how absurd that sounded, they would smile and say the same words Captain Vur once wrote in his log. The Starwind glided through space, leaving the green deserts of Doran 5 far behind. The crew was still buzzing from the events on the planet. Even days later, no one could stop talking about the small desert creature that Mara had saved and how it had returned to protect them. Captain Vur sat in the bridge, staring at the starry void beyond the viewport. Mara had chosen to sit quietly near the observation window, sipping a drink she claimed was hydration juice with a hint of adventure. The hum of the ship's engines filled the background. Vur tapped a note into his tablet. Observation 049. Human Mara continues to display behavior that challenges logical understanding, risks life to protect creatures, displays joy and humor during extreme danger. Effect on crew. Morale increased significantly. Rilu, the communications officer, leaned over to whisper to Vur. Captain, she seems to inspire others just by being herself. No species we have observed has such a strong psychological influence. Vur nodded. Indeed, humans may not be the strongest physically, but they seem unstoppable in spirit. Suddenly, the ship's sensors blared. An alert flashed red across the console. Something massive was approaching. The crew rushed to the control panels. Captain, unknown vessel detected, Relu reported. It is larger than our ship and moving at high speed. Its trajectory intersects ours in less than 10 minutes. Vur tightened his crest ridge. All hands to stations. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Pora's scales shimmered in tension. Captain Shields may not hold against a ship of that size. We must prepare for combat. Mara leaned forward calmly, scanning the incoming vessel. It's big, she said simply. But that doesn't mean we can't handle it. Vur blinked at her. Your calmness is remarkable. Most species panic in such situations, Mara shrugged. Panic doesn't solve anything. Focus does. The approaching ship came into view. It was unlike anything the crew had seen. Dark, sleek, with sharp angles and glowing red lights along the hull. It looked aggressive. Relu gasped. They are warships. Possibly pirates or hostile explorers. Vur's fingers moved quickly over the controls, calculating possible maneuvers. We can't outrun them. Prepare for evasive action and defensive shields. The crew prepared themselves, and tension filled the cabin. Yet Mara sat upright, her eyes calm, almost sparkling with excitement. Human Mara, are you not afraid? Pora asked. I'm aware of the risk, Mara said. But fear doesn't help here. We have to think and act. Vur studied her and realized she was right. Fear slowed the crew, but Mara's presence made everyone sharper. As the enemy vessel drew closer, it fired a warning pulse, a powerful energy beam that shook the Starwind. The crew scrambled, shields flaring under the energy impact. The ship jolted violently, throwing tools and equipment across the cabin. Mara laughed. Now this is fun. Vur spun to her. Fun? The ship could be destroyed. Yes, she said, still smiling, but panicking will not save it. Her laughter was infectious. The crew steadied themselves, moving more efficiently, following commands more accurately. Even the usually nervous Relu focused on calculations with renewed energy. Mara jumped to the control panel beside the captain. Try a maneuver this way, she said, pointing at the navigation chart. Curve around the asteroid belt. The enemy ship will slow down trying to match us. We can use their momentum against them. Vur hesitated but nodded. He followed her suggestion, adjusting the trajectory. The Starwind shot forward, weaving through asteroid formations. The enemy vessel struggled to keep up, colliding with smaller rocks and slowing. The crew watched in awe as Mara continued giving calm, precise instructions. Every suggestion she made turned the situation in their favor. Finally, after several tense minutes, the enemy ship disengaged, deciding that chasing the human vessel was too risky. The warning lights faded. The bridge erupted into relieved cheers, but Mara simply smiled, wiping her hands on her suit. Captain Vur leaned back in his chair. Human Mara, you just saved the ship using nothing but strategy and composure. Mara shrugged modestly. I just stayed calm and thought about what to do next. The ship isn't saved by fear or panic, only by action. Pora tapped her chest in disbelief. Your species is terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Calm under attack, laughing during danger, protecting life when it could harm you. How do you do this? Mara smiled softly. I don't know. We just care, and we keep moving forward. Relu added quietly. Humans are the first species I have observed who turn fear into strength. They inspire others just by existing. Ver wrote a final note in his log. Conclusion: humans are unpredictable, fearless, and capable of extraordinary empathy. The combination of courage, humor, and compassion appears unique among observed species. This may explain their survival and influence across diverse conditions. The rest of the day passed quietly. Mara continued her normal routines, checking equipment, assisting with repairs, and occasionally laughing at minor mishaps that occurred during maintenance. The crew began to realize that her strange behavior was not just about survival. It inspired cooperation, patience, and cleverness. At dinner, the crew discussed what had happened. They shared stories about Mara's cold resistance, her enjoyment of spicy food, her laughter in storms, and now her leadership during the attack. They marveled at how one human could affect so many in such different ways. Pora said, her behavior is not logical, yet it works. She saves lives through empathy, courage, and humor. Logic cannot account for it, Relu nodded. Perhaps logic alone is not the measure of strength. Perhaps humans define a new kind of power, the power to inspire. Vor remained silent, watching Mara eat quietly. He realized that they had underestimated humans for centuries, not for their strength, but for their spirit. Their spirit was unbreakable. Later, Mara sat on the observation deck, gazing at a blue and green planet rising in the distance. Her thoughts drifted to home, to forests, oceans, and friends. She thought of adventures past and challenges yet to come. Humans, she knew, thrived on curiosity, courage, and compassion. It was why she had survived, why she laughed at storms, and why she could face danger without fear. Captain Ver approached her silently. He studied her for a long moment. Human Mara, he said softly, I think I understand now. Your species is not strange simply because of what you do. You are extraordinary because of why you do it. You face danger and discomfort not for power or reward, but because you choose to care and to act. That is remarkable. Mara turned to him, surprised at the depth in his voice. That's a nice way to put it, Captain. Ver nodded. I will write it in my report. Humans are not just resilient. They are inspiring. They turn fear into laughter, weakness into courage, and risk into protection. You are the first example I have observed of such a combination. She smiled softly. Thanks. That means a lot coming from you. The next day, the Starwind approached a dense asteroid field to collect rare crystals. Normally, this task was tedious and dangerous, but Mara led the team with precision. She pointed out safe paths, noticed small shifts in asteroid patterns, and even encouraged the crew to work faster when morale dipped. Ver watched the humans' influence on the aliens. Every small laugh, word of encouragement, or calm correction increased efficiency. The crew moved faster, worked smarter, and even enjoyed the danger that Mara found exciting. When the final crystal was secured and the asteroid field behind them, the captain called a meeting. Crew, we have traveled far, faced storms, desert creatures, hostile ships, and dangerous fields. Through it all, one thing is clear. Humans change the game. He paused, looking at Mara. They bring something beyond skill or strength. They bring courage, humor, and empathy, and that makes them unstoppable in ways we do not fully understand. The crew nodded, some whispering among themselves, all agreeing silently. They had learned it firsthand. Humans were weird, yes, but that strangeness carried power unlike any they had seen. Mara leaned back, her face calm and cheerful as ever. I just do what feels right, she said quietly. I don't think about the rest. Vor wrote his final note in the captain's log. Observation 050. Humans are not only resilient and courageous, they are unpredictable, compassionate, and capable of inspiring extraordinary loyalty and cooperation. They are, without question, a species that changes the rules of survival and exploration. He closed the log, finally understanding the truth. Humans were not just strange for survival or adventure. Their strangeness was a reflection of their spirit, a spirit that inspired others, created bonds across species, and made impossible tasks achievable. And as the star wind sailed through a sparkling nebula, the crew sat quietly watching Mara. She laughed at a minor misstep by Relu, helped a young recruit adjust their suit, and smiled at the stars as if she had been born to roam among them. Captain Vur whispered to himself, "Humans are weird, but their weirdness is what makes them extraordinary." For the first time in his long career, he felt certain of one thing. Wherever humans went, they did not just survive. They changed the world around them. They lifted others, inspired courage, and made life, even in the harshest corners of space, brighter and fuller.